Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Center for Jewish History. I'm Julie Kaplan, the Center's Manager for Public Programs. Over the past 17 years, the Center for Jewish History has grown to be one of the greatest public Jewish historical and cultural institutions in the world. It was founded to bring together the collections of the partner institutions in one place, together comprising the largest and most comprehensive archive of the modern Jewish experience outside of Israel. The Center provides a collaborative home for 5 partner organizations: the American Jewish Historical Society, the Leo Baeck Institute, the Yeshiva University Museum, and the YIVO Institute for Jewish Research. Did I leave out the American Sephardi Federation? Yes, sorry. Certainly the Center is an archive, but it is also a public institution, a Jewish Library of Congress. We see it as our mission to preserve the past so as to bring history alive to the public. It is with this goal in mind that we happily agreed to host this evening's event in partnership with the program in Jewish Studies at the University of Colorado, Boulder, and the editors of the journal European Affairs. Those organizations are currently running a 3-day scholarly symposium here at the Center called Laughing at Power, Fascism, and Authoritarianism: Satire, Humor, Irony, and Interrogating Their Political Efficacy. This evening's public program is being presented in conjunction with the symposium. Please join us after the performance in the Great Hall for a dessert reception, as well as book and CD sales. Now, to say a few words about tonight's very special program, I'm happy to introduce David Shneer, Louis P. Singer Chair of Jewish History and Chair of the Department of Religious Studies at the University of Colorado in Boulder. Thank you for coming tonight, and enjoy the performance.
It's all good. So welcome, everyone. My name is David Shneer, and I'm very excited to introduce 2 of my favorite people, Anna Shternshis and Psoy Korolenko. So Anna Shternshis is the Al and Malka Green Associate Professor. Oh, actually, it's been changed. She is now the professor. She just learned today that she was promoted to full professor in Yiddish language and literature, and is the director of the Anne Tannenbaum Center for Jewish Studies at the University of Toronto. She's the author of Soviet and Kosher, Jewish Popular Culture in the Soviet Union, and more than 20 articles on the Soviet Jewish experience during World War II, Russian Jewish culture, and the post-Soviet Jewish diaspora. And last year, she published Boris and Sonia, Jewish Life Under Stalin, Jewish Life in Stalin's. So it's for sale out in the hallway. It's something about Jews living under Stalin. Psoy Korolenko is a pseudonym of a Russian Jewish songwriter and performer by the name of Pavel Eduardovich Lyon. At the same time, Pavel Lyon is a Slavist with a PhD in Russian literature. And the 2 of them have just released this amazing CD called Yiddish Glory just 4 weeks ago. And since then, its songs have been covered by, get this list, ABC News, BBC World, BBC News, NPR, ORF, which is the Austrian version of NPR, Radio Populaire, which is Italian version of that, Mundofonias, RTBF, which is Belgium's national French language broadcaster, and the other ABC, Australian Broadcasting. So this CD has really taken the world by storm, and it's also for sale out in the hallway, and it's just amazing. And you're going to hear some snippets of the CD tonight with Anna and Psoy, who I would like to invite up.
Hi, it's great to be here, and I'm going to hire David Shneer to be our agent and promote her, because honestly, thank you for this to David, and thank you to the Center for Jewish History. It's great to be presenting this program here for the first time.
Hitler bräuner homen svart av die a grober Strick. Mir'n boyen auf dein Nomen, a Klazet Goran antik zu der Quore werd ich bringen, unser Stalin, unser Glück. Von dein rechter Seite wird hängen Gering, Goebbels, Himmler, Frick. Von dein linker wird sich wiegen Rosenberg und Ribbentrop. In der da rein wirst fliehen mit Wisten Kopperop und wir wollen dir begraben, so tief in der rein. Von dein Padle, von dein Grober, soll kein Stinken nicht sein.
The song you just heard was first collected from Shifra Perlina, a young Jewish refugee woman from Lithuania who was then in Alma-Ata in Kazakhstan in 1943. She first sang it to a Yiddish poet and journalist named Herschel Blostein. I'll show you his picture. Blostein was born in Argentina and moved to the Soviet Union in 1931 to work on Soviet Yiddish literary scene. During the war, he was in Kazakhstan, where he collected Yiddish songs and stories from Jewish refugees and evacuees in 1942 and 1943. Blostein was convinced, as he later wrote in an article about this project, that 1943 was the year when Soviet Jewish humor in Yiddish blossomed. It is somewhat strange to think of 1943 in Europe as the year of Jewish laughter, the year by the beginning of which the majority of Jews in Poland and Ukraine were already killed. And others began to learn about the loss of their families and communities. Nevertheless, it seems that creating humorous songs and stories was one of the ways that people made sense of the horrific events around them. Indeed, in 1943, Soviet Jewish folk songs are cheerful, but they also call for violent revenge against the German army that attempted to destroy the Soviet Union and succeeded in killing so many Jews. In the song that you just heard, Hitler is compared with Haman from the Purim story, an evil state official who tried to destroy Jewish people but failed. In the Soviet Yiddish culture of the time, we see the word Haman and the word Hitler to be used interchangeably. The song provides a running commentary on news relevant to the Jewish audience in 1943. We see the names that are often discussed in Soviet newspapers: German propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels, the president of Reichstag Hermann Göring, Minister of Internal Affairs William Frick, Nazi ideologue Alfred Rosenberg, Minister of Foreign Affairs Joachim Ribbentrop, and of course Adolf Hitler himself. As you all know, all these people died a natural death later. Rosenberg and Göring were convicted at the Nuremberg trial and committed suicide. Frick, Ribbentrop, and Rosenberg were indeed hung. The song, chillingly, in a joking manner, predicts this punishment in 1943. Every song that you will hear today was written during the war. In the Soviet Union, the country that produced so little public Holocaust memory. Most songs comes from the archive of the Kiev Cabinet for Jewish Culture, which was a research lab of the Ukrainian Academy of Science that collected hundreds of folk stories and songs in Yiddish during World War II, starting from 1941 on the trains that took Jews to central parts of the Soviet Union and to the Central Asia. In Central Asia itself, in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and a few other places, and also recorded in Ukraine, starting from 1944 all the way until 1947, just as Ukraine got liberated from the German army. None of these songs, collected by the workers of this ethnomusicological section of the archive, led by Moisei Beregovsky, have been known before this collection was found in the archive. The head of this, and this is how some of the documents look like in this collection. Beregovsky and his colleagues planned to include 40-something of these songs into a book, which was all typed out and ready to be published under the title Jewish Creativity in the Soviet Union During the Great Patriotic War. You can see the beautiful, sexy cover that was ready to go. But it even went for one round of Stalin's censorship, but it was never published. And I'll tell you at the end of the presentation why not. And one of the most astonishing facts about this book and other materials in this archive recorded from Jews during the war, about the war, was how much humor was in these songs. The next song you're about to hear provides, again, commentaries on contemporary news, contemporary to 1944. It was recorded from Velvel-Shargorodsky in Krasnodar region in 1944, and it ridicules Hitler's desire to occupy Ukraine and other parts of the Soviet Union.
Affen euchen Berg und affen grünem Groß schmähen sich die Teitschelach herabgelost die Nuss. Sag, was hat es getroffen, die Reuteitschele Barrieren? Oi, mot uns gegeben das Wegele von Krieg. Sei je nicht kein Bräugens, oi sei je nicht in Kass. Was is mit Kafkas, was is mit Donbass? Nu so dorten Hitler geplane wird Geschäft. Ois groben die Keul, ois pompen dem Neft. Nor so schoin uns das Wegele vermachte we der Russ. Ob mir von dort sich abtragen gemusst. So von Ukraine, wo seid ihr gora weg? Ob mir schon euch dort kein Honig nicht gelernt. Auf euchem Berg und auf dem grünen Groß schmähen sich die Teitschelach herabgelost die Nuss. Nu wože farvojake seid ihr doch erziehend. Oh, und alle Seiten ist Sochen weh und Wind. Da nicht steh und da nicht geh, oi, es ist nicht gut. Deutschland ist auf Zores, Hitler ist kaputt. Deutschland ist auf Zores, Hitler ist kaputt.
before I tell you more about the song, I want to compliment this beautiful English translation of the lyrics, which was done by Tova Benjamin, who is here in the audience, now NYU PhD student in Jewish history. Thank you, Tova. This song has an unusually contemporary feel because we still hear the words like oil, coal, resources, Caucasus, Ukraine, and Crimea in the news today.
And oil rhymes with Geschäft.
Oil rhymes with Geschäft, just like it did then. Today, too, these are the sites and these are the issues that are causing wars, violence, and ethnic conflict. But today, these songs are funny for different reasons compared to why they were popular in the 40s. In the 40s, they laugh at the German attempts to occupy Ukraine. In 2000s, it's funny because we don't expect Yiddish songs to care about oil and coal. But there is also a third layer of humor here. The song is actually based on another humorous song, the one from the 19th century. It's an old Maskilic song, it's old Hasidic song that ridicules Maskilim. It calls them taich, so ridiculing Yekes, and referring to them as taich. But here, they replace taich with Deutsch, which is an actual German that's trying to kill a Jew. So this continuity of humor continues. It's just the object of humor changes. By listening a song like this one and others that you'll hear today, we find out what people in 1943 believed was funny. All the songs you already heard, and you will hear more today, are crude, bold, physical. The humor is like that, very similar in some ways to depictions of violence against fascists. We see Germans running away with their pants down, or their pants soiled from fear. Hitler is often portrayed as a woman, and here I'll show you some pictures from the Soviet magazine called Crocodile. This is a German who is suffering in Ukraine, near Stalingrad, 1943. This is Hitler, also, having trouble there, and and of course, popular one, Hitler portrayed as a woman, there's nothing funnier than that, of course, and who cries and complains. So the nature of this humor is juvenile. This is what children find funny, and I often thought about this. Why is the humor so juvenile? And then I realized that, well, this is because many of these songs were written by children or teenagers. This is what they found funny. It's just they happened to live during the darkest period of Jewish history. So the next song you're about to hear was recorded from a child. Her name, I'll show you how it looks in the archive. Her name is Clara Rosenberg. In 1944, she was interviewed in December 1944 in Mogilov-Podolsk, which means that she survived the war under the occupation. And then she was a student, as the notes helpfully tell us, of school number 18, who wanted to sing the song called New Wedding, Dinah Hassan.
Rascht und sieht in Gasse ziehen, die Deutschen machen Pleite. Sie verlieren das Gesind, sie laufen wie zerdrehte. Schreit doch Hitler, oi, 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 liebe Machotonem. Treibt mein Eulem nicht azoi, sie fallen auf den Ponem. Ois kommen die Reute, die Reute, die Reute. Ois kommen die Reute, die Reute seinen do. Set schon dorten Affenberg, Reute von alle. Jeden seinen negerig zu sein, die neue Kalle. Sie vor dort Affenberg, breit wie neuer Steve. Jeden freilich und mit Spaß. Kamas, where is the Nekeve? What is the Katyusha, Katyusha, Katyusha? What is the Katyusha, Katyusha, ich schon do? Sitzt dort Hitler in Berlin, ist auf große Zores, läuft sein Reichsarmee wohin, sieht euch schon auf Kapores, dachte mir, so kimat, als wischt die Augen, steht doch Gering bei der Seite und hebt sie Mund zu fragen, Hitler, oi, was weinst du? Was weinst du? Was weinst du? Hitler, oi, was weinst du? Was klagst du so nach mir? Wind ist mir und noch und weh, wo seien meine Reusen? Guck nur an die Reichsarmee, sie hat schon volle Eisen. Meine junge Jahr vermisst, hat man mir aufdommet. Sie ist gewähnt nach Holm, sie ist zu badern schon, weil sie ist gewesen, der Holm gewesen. Sie ist gewesen, der Holm so süß. Efter tut nur Gott an Ness, wie es steht in Bichel. Hitler, oi, vergess, guck on das reute Ticho. Guck, wie Stalin weiß da fein, ein dieser der Mejuches, skripet in die Teuren sein Kass. Beis wie 1000 Ruches, die Reichsarmee begroben, 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 die Reichsarmee begroben, zu alle schwarze Jahr. Freuen sich die unsere Jidderlich und seinen sehr noch freilich, spielen sie ob die Fiederlich, jeder is a Meiler, geläubt is es mit sein Gewehr, der was tut ewig leben. Es ist gewesen bitter schwer, nur wir sind geblieben leben. Mazel tov uns alle, uns alle, uns alle. Mazel tov uns alle, mir fahren schon nach heim.
Yiddish songs of the time glorify Katyusha and, which is of course a machine gun, I think, kind of a gun, which they use, they often use a good Yiddish word for it called pulimyot. The admiration, almost fetishization of the machine gun is understandable. Not so many Jews in Europe were able to get their hands on weapons, especially on machine guns, and to use them to fight against fascism. And this topic of a morbid wedding is actually very popular in Yiddish folklore when a bride kills a groom and all that. But here we have a very different bride and very different wedding, the one that brings love to death and brings marriage, the marriage of Hitler to Katyusha, the machine gun that will kill him. Speaking of, if there is love in this marriage, there's only love to that weapon that will kill the groom. Speaking of guns and violence and destruction and revenge, our next song deals with Purim and a story of how the enemies of Jews exactly suffered and how the current enemies of Jews will pay for their atrocities. It was recorded in Kazakhstan in 1945, and it's called Purim Gifts for Hitler.
Du bist nicht mein erster Sohn, ich hab gehad, a Sache Sohn, ich will noch verschreiben, euch dein Namen in dem Zettel, was hebt sich an mit Amen. Amen, Antiochus, Torquemade, Kruschewan, oben die Welt verchiepest, früher noch von dir, a langer Zettel, Amen, sie ist voran, es wird nicht stehen, kein Papier. Hat ihr alle sich hat Ziel gestellt, mich hab zum Mecken von der Welt, nur nicht an euch ist es gewähnt. Stalin wird schon kurz in euch die Hand. Mein Friedler Haus hast du verbrennt, hast du meine Töchter geschämt, hast du meine Eifelig zertrotten und geschworen, mich Haus zu rotten. Nor viel du narrisch ist dein beiser Träum, mir will leben sei wie sei, dein Sof wird sein auf Homens Bäume, am Yisroel Chai.
It's too short of a Am Yisroel Chai, I want longer. The song includes all the failed enemies of Jewish people. Of course, we already talked about Haman, Antiochus, whose defeat Jews celebrate during Hanukkah, Torquemada, the head of Spanish Inquisition, and of course, Pavel Kruschewan, the alleged author of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, who the text that inspired a lot of violence against Jews. So all these people end up on Haman's tree. But what's interesting about this song is, like he sang Am Yisroel Chai at the end, and usually Psoy sings it longer, but we're short for time, so it's not as dramatic. Maybe you can show how you sing it properly.
Dein Sof will sein auf Homens Bäum, Am Yisroel Chai schön.
Never mind. Anyway. If you buy the CD, you'll see how he does it properly. Anyway, so this line, Am Yisroel Chai, was not in the original document. You see, it will end on Haman's Bäum, on the Haman's tree. But Psoy says to me, when I showed him that text, he says to me, it doesn't rhyme. We have to have something that rhymes with anyway, sai v'sai. So he just added Am Yisroel Chai by himself. So I was against it because I believe this goes against Soviet spirit of the song. Soviet Jews would never sing Am Yisroel Chai. It was against the spirit of the material. But every time we performed this is when he got the ovations. So I sold my soul to the commercial success and let him sing like that. A year later, I found a draft of that song. I'm going to show it to you. And those of you who read Yiddish will see that the last line of the song, which was probably cut out by censors or by self-censors, who knows, actually says Am Yisroel Chai. So that told us one important lesson. Well, to me, humility, but that's one separate story. But to the project is that an artist gets another artist better than a historian gets an artist, living even though they're separated by time. And the story of the song and how it was cut does not end there, because in 1968, Sovetish Heimland, the Soviet Jewish monthly, published a version of that song. They took out a lot of things. They took out Purim from it, for example, and most other things. And the tune is also some random one, not true, doesn't quite fit. And they also took out Am Yisroel Chai, probably for the same reasons that I believe that it didn't fit into that song. Nobody could say Am Yisroel Chai in the Soviet Union in 1968. So this song gives us a time capsule of what Soviet Jews could and did sing during the war, about the war. Very soon, they were no longer able to do that. But with that particular window, it was possible. The next piece that you're going to hear is actually not a song, but an actual joke A joke recorded by our friend Blostein, who we heard earlier, again in 1943, and it's called The Beard.
Als Hitler oder sein, doch sein Geschäft ist kaputt, hat sich zugeklebt an Bord, sich getan vom Jiddischlich. Und sich der wusst bei Goebbelsen, wo es ist noch geblieben, a lebendiger Jid in der dritte Imperie. Und gekommen zu dem Jid, behalt mich, Bruder, hat gesagt zum Jiden, Hitlers Menschen jagen sich nach mir. Dem Jid ist bald geworden verdächtig, der ganze Indien. Hat noch nicht gehört bis jetzt, dass ein Jid soll sagen auf Hitlers Aufrufen Menschen. Hayes, Int, Paskudniakis, Hazerim, aber nicht Menschen. Kein Narr ist der Jid nicht gewesen, sagt zu sein Baldover Azoi. Ihr seht doch, Väter, als allein, ob ich mich euch behalten, Bechadre Chadores, und dazu, ob ich im Ganzen arob gewarfen dem jüdischen Parze von sich. Koidem Kol, muss ich euch arob nehmen die Bord und überlosen noch Stickelach Wonzes. Jeder nach Hitler hat bewiesen, etwas zu entfernen. Oder jeder streckt und die Hand in der Bord. Bei Hitler haben genommen zittern Hand und Fies. Und das hat ihm den ganzen Reis gegeben. Und der Jid hat gesagt, ich hab schon gesehen Ziegen mit Bord. Nee. Das ist natürlich. Ich hab schon viele gesehen Bett mit Bart. Mit jüdischem Bart in die Hand. Aber ein jüdischer Bord, ein verhintischer Morde, hab ich nicht keinmal nicht gesehen. Und der Witz endet sich mit einem Gramm. Sagt der Jid, Hitler, ja Bord, nicht Bord. Da geht nicht in kein Bett. Dein einzig Nord ist in der Erde.
The most optimistic, the most humorous, the funniest Yiddish songs celebrating Soviet victory in World War II appeared before the actual Soviet victory actually happened, and definitely while Jews were still losing the war against fascism. Well before, for example, then Hungarian Jews were rounded up to go to Auschwitz. Also, at that time, the scope of destruction of the Jewish communities in the Soviet Union and in Europe was not fully known, and these songs celebrated the end of the war and the end of the displacement, or they hoped for it. The function was to give hope rather than to celebrate the actual victory. All Yiddish songs of the time, including humorous ones, call for the ultimate revenge on the German army. They are not invested in the Never Again motto, which became a staple of the Holocaust education in the West, since Meir Kahane used it in his book, published in 1972, entitled Never Again, A Program for Survival. Instead, Soviet Yiddish songs proclaim that the German army, the fascists, should be killed and punished. Then violence should never happen again, of course not, but only because all those who conceived or such destruction or performed such destruction should be killed. The story of revenge, of unforgiveness, is the ultimate feature of the Soviet Yiddish wartime culture, and it didn't fit with the memory of the Holocaust that developed in Israel and in the United States, especially during the Cold War, when Germany was once again part of a world economy and the Soviet Union was at war against it. In 1949, the Cabinet for Jewish Culture was closed. In 1950, Moisei Beregovsky was arrested and only released in 1956. In the 50s, and that's why the book never came out. In the 50s, it became dangerous to speak about Yiddish culture in public, and no state funding was available, of course, to continue the research that they started in the 40s. The materials that they collected was seized and made secret, was deposited first to the NKVD archive and then transferred to the manuscript section of the Ukrainian National Library, where it became available to researchers in the 90s, thanks to the work of Mila Sholokhova, who I think is here as well, who first cataloged those materials and made them available for researchers like myself. Today, we wanted to tell you about the songs, not just to alert you to the entire layer of culture of Yiddish-speaking Jews that developed during World War II, and which, similarly to Jewish cultures of Vilna, Warsaw, Lodz, and other places in Europe, reflected a strong desire of Jews to fight against fascism, to revenge the dead, and to remember their loved ones. We also wanted to honor the heroic people who collected and preserved these songs for us. When they were arrested, they believed that their collection was gone forever. I spoke to the granddaughter of Moisei Beregovsky recently, and she said to me, one thing she remembers about her grandfather is that her grandmother, his wife, yelled at him all the time after he was released from prison in 1956, because he spent every day, from the morning to the very late night, trying to sort his archive. And she said to him, she told me, nobody will ever need it. You're wasting your time, you're wasting your health, and this fight is a vivid memory that she has of her grandfather. But the grandmother, his wife, was wrong. Yes, it is 70 years after the archive was closed, but the songs did see the light of day, and for that we're grateful to Beregovsky and his colleagues for their work, and to you for your attention tonight. We will finish our part of this program with the song that was written in 1946, the song that was recorded by Beregovsky team actually outside of the Soviet Union in a joint distribution in a DP camp and in Germany. And it signals the return of Jewish humor of where it is supposed to be, self-deprecating. The song is talking about the life of Jews that disagree with one another, and the life of Jews where two Jews have three opinions, and also the time when Jews are making fun of Jewish organizations that are trying to help them, such as Joint Distribution Committee and Sachnut.
Gekommen in Berlin, nicht und nicht ein, und me fort, und me sitzt noch auf ein Ort. Me läuft zu Joint, me läuft zum Reben, kann sich nicht keine zu geben, sagt mir, wie es lieber was wird sein mit uns der Sof. Lieber Bruder, nur betochen, mir zerschäm noch a paar Wochen, wirst du sein ob jener Seite. Und von auf die Scheun alright. Und in Joint der starre Pios. Uns gibt nicht kein Entfer, no вопрос, me sagt ihm, za Sachen weh. Meint als es ist okay. Sorg nicht, sie ist noch gut, was du a Bocher von Sochnut. Ist nur a Chvat Kiryat, geht a Zertifikat. Noch a Regen scheint die Sonne, weißen mir schon lang davon. verliert man Tage nicht den Mut, aber mit Jekes ist kaputt. Aber Berlin ist stark zerstört, liegt ein Elend in der Erde, und ich ist Ruhe, tanz und schrei, heure Am Israel. Lang wollt noch gewinn mein Lied, nur ich bin schon etwas nie. Es wird sein, da je no dai. Hitras, adieu, goodbye.
Thank you. Psoy Korolenko. Okay. Total improvisation. I don't have translation, of course I do. Okay, the last song he'll sing, really the last song. For the record, I was against that because it's running out of time. It's a Purim song that says, Happy New Year, 1944.
It translates it. Translates itself. The better key. Zum neuen Jahr kann ich jederlich absore eichon sorgen. Genug uns schon zu jammern, genug uns schon zu klagen. Genug uns schon zu jammern, genug uns schon zu klagen. Genug uns zu beweinen, unsere Liebe teute, die Oberhand wird werden schon die Armee, die Reute, die Oberhand wird werden schon die Armee, die Reute. Hitler kann uns hergen, nur bei Nacht in Cholem, a sochen weh wird ihm sein, as wird werden Scholem, a sochen weh wird ihm sein, as wird werden Scholem. Scholem Frieden auf der Welt, dem Teitschel abzeloches, dem Teitschel abzeloches, Hitler warf den Hitz und Kält und kann uns kuschen in Toches. Hitler warf den Hitz und Kält und kann uns kuschen in
Thank you very much. You see, it's really important for Psoy to finish with Toches. It's a whole thing. And with you saying that. Okay, now we'll do it all over again. No. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce our next presenters. David Shneer, a historian who holds the position of Louis Zinger Chair in Jewish History, and who's also a department chair of religious studies and professor of history, religious studies and Jewish studies, but you didn't write it. It's University of Colorado, Boulder, but it's good that I know that. David is the world's leading scholar on Soviet Jewish history and culture. He recently, he first published a book on Soviet Yiddish writers, writing in the 1930s. Then he published an award-winning book called Through Soviet Jewish Eyes, Photography, War, and the Holocaust, which changed the discussion in the field about the importance of visual culture in understanding the Soviet experience of the war, and also brought to life the works of previously obscure photojournalists who actually documented the Holocaust. I think the book is for sale after the show, so I strongly recommend that if you don't know it by heart, please buy it. He is now writing a sequel to that book called Grief, the Biography of a Holocaust Photograph, and it will appear shortly next year, wow, at Oxford University Press. He is performing with Jewlia Eisenberg, an American composer, a performer, hostess, and an incredibly interesting and amazing artist. She's the founder of and the band leader of Charming Hostess, and she coined the term, nerdy, sexy, commie, girly. Says citation needed. To describe the genre of music, which spans the eclectic range of styles. And her CDs are also for sale in the Great Hall. And today they're going to present to us the premiere, right, of the Lin Jaldati's work in Cabaret of 1930s. Please welcome Jewlia Eisenberg and David Shneer.
Talk amongst yourselves. Not like I needed to give you an invitation.
Apparently you did.
This accordion player and pianist is named Shoko Nagai. Let's hear a hand. I feel like this is like interrupting our feng shui. Can we? Yeah.
Feng shui proper.
Yeah, let's.
You're on this side. I'm on this side.
The chi flow is so much better now. You don't even know what that is in New York, do you? I'm just messing with you. I like to do that sometimes. Okay? United Front song.
Y como ser humano, el hombre lo que quiere es su pan. Las habladurías le bastan ya porque estas nada le dan. Pues un, dos, tres, pues un, dos, tres, compañero, en tu lugar. Porque eres del pueblo, afíliate ya en el Frente Popular. And just because she's human, she doesn't want a pistol to her head. She wants no servants under her, no boss over her head. So left 2, 3, so left 2, 3 to the work that we must do. March on in the Workers' United Front, for you are a worker too. Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum braucht er was zu essen, bitte sehr. Es macht ihn angeschwätzt nicht satt, das schafft kein Essen mehr. Drum links 2, 3, drum links 2, 3, wo dein Platz, Genosse, ist.
reih dich ein in die Arbeiterseinheitsfront, weil auch du ein Arbeiter bist. So we're going to tell you a story in 30 minutes about a woman named Lin Jaldati, who was born in Amsterdam in 1912. And she grew up in a Jewish family, sort of a lower middle class Jewish family, whose grandmother spoke Yiddish, but whose father really didn't want her to be speaking Yiddish in the home, and she insisted on her daughter being Dutch. But Rebecca, as she was known at the time, or Lintje, as her mother fondly called her, snuck out to Zionist meetings in her teenage years. And she snuck out on her lunch breaks when she was working in the factory to go train in dancing. And so what we have here is her in a review in 1934, dancing with a chorus line. And I actually don't know which one she is. And I actually asked her daughter, do you know which one she is? And she said, I have no idea. So that's the point of a chorus line, right? To have everybody blend into the background so that the feature can be up front. But this was not really compelling work for her. And so she decided that she would start learning about Jewish dance. And so she was engaged with a number of people from the Vilna Trupa who had settled in Amsterdam. And she learned from them about interwar Yiddish art theater and Yiddish cabaret, or Kleinkunst, as it's called. And she sort of created these caricatures of biblical characters. So here you have die Schnorke, or the beggar woman. You have Rebecca at the well. This is a famous story from the Bible of Rebecca, and here's her that's the bucket you draw water from. And she's got her keys. I don't know what the keys are doing there. But an interesting twist on this performance was the idea of cross-dressing.
So cross-dressing within Yiddish culture was fairly common at this time. As Jews are moving from east to west, there starts to be a lot of play around gender, and gender displacement starts to happen a lot too. So we're seeing this, like Pepi Littman is a famous singer that's also doing stuff like this. Molly Picon, probably you've seen her movies. So that's something, she's part of a larger Yiddish motion that is happening at this time. So we're gonna sing, so she's also doing a lot of play with kind of moving back and forth within religious culture and radical culture. So she's starting to get politically radicalized, but she's still singing music from the Yiddish canon that is religious, or this kind of Hasidic canon. And this is one of the songs we're going to be singing right now, is a song that kind of valorizes labor and is about the importance of labor, specifically the labor of a chazan, the labor of a cantor, like what is the work of a cantor. So within Judaism, we actually also have a lot of that. So like Ki Hinei HaChomer during the Yom Kippur service, we talk about labor and the importance of labor and its religious value. So this is kind of both part of that tradition and also in resistance to it. Is the words up? Oh yeah, awesome. Anything else on this? No, I think that looks good. A chazan on Shabbos. Okay.
Siz gekommen a chazan in Stettel, zu davnen auf Shabbos, zu davnen auf Shabbos, zu davnen auf Shabbos, zu davnen auf Shabbos, ahei, 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 zu davnen auf Shabbos.
Sind ihm gekimmen, Herren, die drei schönste Balabatim von dem Städtler. Hey, 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 einer Schneiderl und einer Kowalczyk und einer Balagolczyk. Ruft sich ob der Schneiderl, hey, oi, hat gedavent. Oi, hat gedavent. azoi wie me geht. Mitten vor dem Azi, mitten nodel Stoch. Azoi hat
Ruft sich auf der Kowalczyk. Ai, 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 hat gedauert. Anishama, 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 oh, hat gedauert. Also wie mir gibt, mit dem Hammer a Sechs, mit den Kletschers a Quetsch. Also
hat gedauert.
ruft sich auf die Balagolschika. Ai, 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 ai. Also wie mir geht, mit den Joschkes Satzi, mit dem Jaitscha Klapp. Also
hat gedauert. So Lin became a member of the Communist Party in 1936 because of a boyfriend, but also it was in the context of the Spanish Civil War that was about to break out in Spain. And go figure. Little did you know it's in England. Spanish Civil War took place in England. But she became a communist and was also part of this leftist scene in Amsterdam. And so the leftist scene also put on these cabarets. And these were multicultural cabarets in which she performed the Jewish act. So you can see here, it's, you have an Indonesian performer, you have a Russian performer, and she is actually doing what's called Eastern Jewish performance. So then she meets the man she would spend the rest of her life with, Eberhard Raebling, who's pictured here at the piano. He is a German, not Jew, who is a, go figure, you can have those on stage too, who is a trained pianist and he got his PhD in musicology. But he ends up leaving Germany in 1936 to follow his PhD advisor, who is Jewish, and who ended up settling in the Netherlands. And so he moves to the Netherlands and ends up meeting Lin in a sort of, we're calling it a sort of flop house in The Hague in 1937, and he encourages her to give up her chorus line dancing and actually break out with her solo show of doing just Eastern European Jewish music. And so she does. And so she performed the song that we just sang, Achaz Anav Shabbos. So in Dutch, the G is pronounced ch. And what we're going to sing now is the next song that's in circles called Rabosai, or How the Tsar Drinks His Tea. And this, do you want to introduce the Sportlied?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So there is an indigenous tradition in German music called a Sportlied, or a satiric song, which comes from the 1848 revolution, going way back to the 19th century. And Yiddish also has an indigenous tradition of sort of satiric songs, poking fun at chassids, sometimes rabbis, or cantors in this case,
Or
in the last
sometimes
case,
the Tsar.
and in this case, the Tsar.
So
And
yeah, when we're starting to think about like what is anti-fascist music, and you're starting to look within Yiddish culture for that, you're seeing the roots of it with these old songs. So you get to repurpose. These songs about the Tsar are amazingly useful.
And we need to tell them about their part.
Totes.
You guys have a part.
Everyone has a part to play. No, I'm serious. You really do. Okay, so your part is the Otazoy section. Can we play chorus? So let's try the first one. 1, 2, 3. Here it sounds like
Otazoy, Otazoy, trinkt der Kaiser Tee. Otazoy, Otazoy, trinkt der Kaiser Tee.
You're so ready now. Who wants to come up? Anyone? No? Good. Okay. All right, should we try it? All right.
And you can see that there's 3 different verses. So the first verse is the Tsar, how does the Tsar drink his tea? And you can see the translation. It's basically, this is how a poor Jew would have fantasized about living in the capital. And it's probably made up. I don't think the Tsar actually drank the tea from a pile of sugar, and ate potatoes with a soldier shooting them through a wall of butter and
He did
sleeping
it.
at night. Yeah, he did.
He did that.
He probably did.
He did that. Everyone did it that way.
Rabosai, Rabosai, Chachomim on a brek. Ich will euch etwas fragen, ich will euch etwas fragen.
No. Frag ze, frag ze, frag.
Entfert mir alle auf mein erste Kasche. Wieso trinkt der Kaiser Tee?
Tee.
Jo.
Der Kaiser. Men nimmt de Hitler Zicker und man macht rein lecker. Und man gießt da rein heiß Wasser und der Kaiser ist schon
Otazoy, trinkt der Kaiser Tee. Otazoy, Otazoy, trinkt der Kaiser Tee. Otazoy, Otazoy, trinkt der Kaiser Tee. Otazoy, Otazoy, trinkt der Kaiser Tee. Rabosai, Rabosai, Chachomim on a bread. Ich will euch etwas fragen. Ich will euch etwas fragen.
No. Frag schon, frag schon, frag.
Entfert mir alle auf mein nächste Kasche. Wieso ist der Kaiser Bulbes?
Bulbus.
Jo.
Der Kaiser. Man nimmt die Wand von Putter und man legt die Bulbes rein. Ohne Soldaten mit der Armate schießt die Bulbes vor die Putter. Dem Kaiser gleich in Moller rein.
Otazoy, Otazoy, ist der Kaiser Bulbes. 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 Rabosai, Rabosai, Chachomim on a break. Ich will euch etwas fragen. Ich habe letzte Scheile zu fragen.
Frag schon, frag schon, frag.
Entfert mir alle auf mein letzte Scheile. Wieso schläft der Kaiser bei Nacht?
Weihnacht.
Ja.
Der Kaiser. Man wendet auf und fettet und man schleidet dem Kaiser rein. Und ein Regiment steht die ganze Nacht.
Otazoy,
Atazoi, schlaft der Kaiser bei Nacht. Atazoi, Atazoi, schlaft der Kaiser bei Nacht. Atazoi, Atazoi, schlaft der Kaiser bei Nacht. Atazoi, Atazoi, schlaft der Kaiser bei Nacht.
So she doesn't get to perform publicly for very long because the Germans invade the Netherlands May 1940. And so at that point, she is no longer able to perform publicly. She gives dance lessons to support herself. And then in 1942, because remember, he's a German citizen, he gets a draft notice for the Wehrmacht, and she gets a deportation notice to Westerbork, and then on, we know now, to Auschwitz or Sobibor. So neither of them want to answer these notices, so they go into hiding. And they go into hiding, and they actually end up giving illegal house concerts. And what Lin's daughter told me, Yalda, was that the Nazis sort of had official concerts with this sort of public performance, but the Freie Kunstner, which is the sort of underground artist organization, organized these underground concerts that actually were packed, and that people would actually buy tickets for the official concerts and then not go, and people would be performing for an empty hall. And nobody likes to perform for an empty hall. So this is, what? Word up. So this is a concert program that I found in her archive of an illegal concert that they gave. So this is the building that they hid out in. This is another archival photograph. But they end up getting betrayed by one of the neighbors in July 1944. So they were so close. But basically, the Netherlands is one of the last countries to be liberated, May 1945. So that's very late. So probably they would have had a whole nother year to sort of live in hiding. But they get betrayed in the same summer as Anne Frank. And they actually all meet each other at Westerbork, which is where she, her sister, her brother, her mother, and her father, and Anne, Margot, Otto, and Edith end up in Westerbork, and they all end up on the last train to Auschwitz, September 3rd, 1944. He ends up escaping with their daughter, who was born during the war, into hiding again. So he doesn't end up getting sent to a concentration camp. And he actually would have been probably killed on the spot because he was considered a traitor to the German army. So she survives Auschwitz, and she survives Bergen-Belsen. And she actually, and her sister, who was a nurse, actually nursed Anne and Margot Frank from typhus. And they ended up not surviving typhus. And she did survive typhus. And her sister ended up telling Otto Frank after the war about the fate of his daughters. So this is an early post-war picture, and we know it's post-war because she's got the mark of Auschwitz on her arm. But she takes one summer, just one summer, to sort of recover her body, and so she starts singing again on stage, and she's always got her husband, Eberhard, at the piano, and she starts singing again summer 45, late summer 45, and she ends up touring through the Scandinavian countries through DP camps. So she goes to Copenhagen, Stockholm, Helsinki, and then she ends up in Berlin at the displaced persons camp called Schlachtensee. And this was the theater at Schlachtensee, Baderech, or On the Way. And this is a concert program of their show. And here she is with a mask, and that was pretty common in this period to be performing with these sort of I guess I want to call them expressionist masks, but this is the post-war period, and I kind of feel like this is her sort of ghostly presence with whom she's dancing on stage. She ends up traveling through the communist world. So the displaced persons camp was closed in 1948, and remember where Rabeling is from? He's from Germany, but specifically he was from Berlin, and so he still has family, and so they're going to visit his family. And his family were Nazis. So this is a Auschwitz survivor going to stay at her Nazi in-law's house. So in 1948, the place that she had been performing, the displaced persons camp, gets closed down because the United States is basically done supporting displaced persons in Berlin. And so she has to find a new place to perform. And so she ends up performing for the first time in an explicitly communist context with the Kulturbund, which is operating in East Berlin under Soviet authorities. And she ends up getting an invitation to travel through newly communist Eastern Europe. So this is a program, a poster, I should say, from her concert in, where are we? We're in Warsaw, excuse me. But what's important about this is she and Eberhard have top billing, and Ziegan and Schumacher, for those of you who know who they are, they're very famous Yiddish comedians, have second billing. So she was that important in the post-war period. So she goes to Prague, which is also newly communist, and there she meets the sort of, I want to call him the sort of godfather of global communism, Paul Robeson. I've never used that word in public before, but it probably sticks with him. But you can see he's like 6'5", and she's like 5'2". So you can see that he's looming over her, but they end up being on a radio program together. And that's where we got the title for the program, Art is My Weapon. And so they both talked about art as their collective weapon, she on behalf of Jews, he on behalf of African Americans. So then they end up making the really hard decision to move from Amsterdam back to his hometown of Berlin. But they choose East Berlin because they're both communists. And so he actually has a job with the music journal, the state music journal, because all culture in the communist countries is funded and produced by the state. What's she going to do? Sort of not play lonely housewife. So she ends up getting a gig teaching Germans folk dancing. So this is a picture of her. Again, I'm like, this popped out in the archive and was like, I think I made actually like a scream in this very, very quiet German reading room. For those of you who ever worked in German reading rooms, it's quiet, and this was not appropriate behavior in a German reading room. But this picture would probably make any of you like, what the hell is going on here? What turns out is she was actually safely reintroducing Germans in the East to their own folk traditions, because Nazis had kind of tainted German folk culture, and so she was able to sort of reintroduce that because she kind of had permission, because she's a Jewish Auschwitz survivor, which makes her basically golden in communist East Germany. All right, so she's going to be teaching German folk dancing, but she probably doesn't want to do that for a living. So she actually ends up singing and performing as well. So her first concert in East Germany is actually at a Kristallnacht commemoration, November 9th, which is the date of Kristallnacht, which was in 1938, and it's when the Nazis had a major pogrom against the German Jewish population and businesses. And East Germany is commemorating Kristallnacht every year, basically since 1945, when the Soviet army liberated East Germany. But it's probably surprising to you, it was surprising to me, that East Germany actually maintained a specifically Jewish memory, but they framed it in anti-fascist terms. So here she is on the concert program singing the two classic sort of, what I'm calling them, her anti-fascist canon. So she sang Es brennt, or It is Burning, Mordechai Gebirtig's famous 1938 song, although it's generally misattributed to being a ghetto song from 1942. And Zog nit kein Mor, Never Say. And that became a sort of, I like to think of it as the sort of European Jewish national anthem before Hatikva, the Israeli national anthem, sort of pushed it aside globally. But amongst Bundists, if we sang tonight, Zog nit kein Mor, if there are any Bundists in the audience, you would presumably rise. And it's this sort of very powerful moment. And sort of we were like, what's going on here? But it's very meaningful still to this day. But we're talking about humor and satire. But I wanted to show you this because this is, in particular, how important Kristallnacht was to the state. The East German Jewish communities convinced the government to actually produce a commemorative postage stamp, which is the government's way of saying this is an important holiday. This is the first country in the world, to the best of my knowledge, to ever produce a postage stamp for Kristallnacht. Israel did not do it this is the 25th anniversary, 1963. Israel did not do it, and West Germany did not do it until 1988 for the 50th anniversary. So she had this encounter once with the person who is going to help move us into the sort of closing stage of our narration.
Okay, so she becomes part of this kind of cultural elite of East Germany, and there's actually a lot of Jews and important Jewish composers that are a part of that in the post-war period, including Paul Dessau, but right now we're going to sing a song by Hans Eisler. So in the States, he's pretty famous for doing a lot of film scores, for like Hollywood film scores, because during the war he was here in California. But then he was exiled, his second exile is from here because he fell under, the House of Un-American Activities decided that he was the Karl Marx of music, and I think his sister testified against him. Right, it's really a really bad HUAC story. It's a bad HUAC story. There's not that many good ones. So he went back to East Germany. He went back to Germany, which at that point was East Germany. He's very famous for his collaborations with Bertolt Brecht. This is one of them. Actually, this is Tucholsky. Yeah, this is Tucholsky, but he's very famous for his work with Brecht also. He studied under Schoenberg, comfortable with 12-tone, but also with cabaret and jazz forms. And this is from an agitprop play. I believe it's supposed to be funny. Because that's not really done. Good?
There is rice on the river in the provinces of the river. The people need rice. If we bring the rice from the warehouse, it will cost us more. Those who bring the rice boats will then get much less rice. For me, then the rice will then be even cheaper.
What is rice, actually?
Do you know, what's this thing called rice? God only knows what rice is. I only know its price. When winter comes, the workers all need clothing. We must buy all of the cotton and then put a tight hold on it. When the cold weather comes, then the clothing will cost more. These cotton spinning mills, they pay too high wages. There's far too much cotton anyway.
What is cotton, actually?
Do I know, do you know, what's this thing called cotton? God only knows what cotton is. I only know its price. Men take too much feeding. Well, that's what makes them so expensive. For the feeding of men, other men are needed. Well, the cooks can make the food cheaper, but those who eat it make it expensive. There's too few men around here anyway.
But what is a man, actually?
Do I know, do you know, what's this thing called a man? God only knows what a man is. I only know his price. God only knows what a man is. I only know his price.
Let's give it up for Jewlia Eisenberg. I wish I could sing like that. So Lin Jaldati ends up becoming the most well-known East German Yiddish singer, period. So this is a concert program up at the top, and she's also the most visible Auschwitz survivor. And she's a Jewish Auschwitz survivor. To be an Auschwitz survivor in East Germany does not necessarily mark you as Jewish. because it considered itself a communist country, and communists were also incarcerated in Auschwitz. So this is from 1960. This is her at a program, and you can see the photograph of the ramp at Auschwitz. So she takes her Yiddish program and puts it in the service of the state. And we were talking a little bit earlier about what happens when anti-fascist music gets put in service of power. And so East Germany ends up using this couple as a sort of cultural diplomats. So they travel first to Indonesia, where she's singing in Yiddish to Indonesian rice farmers in 1965. No joke. It's rice. It's food. I think it's a grain. It comes out of the ground. But they spent a lot of time with the Indonesian Communist Party, which 1 month after they were there, there was a military coup, and basically all of their friends who had hosted them, they were there for a whole month. They were all murdered. 500,000 people died in that coup. So then they traveled to North Korea. And they perform for North Korean industrial workers. And she performs Esprent, which the Chinese, she also goes to China, which I don't have an image from China to show you, but the Chinese government are worried that they don't want her to sing Esprent, it's burning, because they're worried it's going to conjure up images of a nuclear catastrophe. So she's like, I'm going to sing it anyway. So she goes back to East Germany because the Asian communist countries no longer really want to have European communism in their backyard, especially after Mao inaugurates his Cultural Revolution. So she ends up staying in East Germany, and she works in these hootenannies. So she worked with Western leftists to import the form of the hootenanny, which is sort of folk music form that dissolves the boundary between audience and performer. So you can see her doing a hootenanny here. And here, she's actually one of the co-founders of the Festival of Political Song, which was an international gathering of leftist musicians from around the world from 1970 until 1991 so she met lots of colleagues from around the world who ended up then hosting the couple in the 70s and 80s.
We just want to put a pitch out there. If anyone feels like they want to host a festival of political song, we think that's a great idea, so talk to us afterwards.
Thank you, Jewlia. And so in the 1980s, she's diagnosed with breast cancer. And so she kind of sees that her life is coming to an end, and so she actually ends up adding a song to her repertoire, which I had not seen before until the 1980s. And it's this song here, which is actually the oldest Yiddish song that we are performing for you tonight. So it's called The Miller's Tears. It's from 1899, and it speaks about loss, and a loss of a home, and you can see the English on the right, and this is going to be our final song.
Oh my God, I'm wearing a lot of gold right now. If you're someone who likes to sing along, we invite you to do that. And if you're someone that likes to play a percussion part, I would like you to do that. If you want, I'm going to teach it to you right now.
Give it up for Shoko
That's
Shoes.
Shoko Nagai, people. Shoko Nagai. You can give her another hand, please.
And we'll be in the hallway afterwards for comments, questions, conversation, and signing.
Right. Books, CDs. What happened? You just totally dropped out.
wie viel Jahren seinen verfahren, seit ich bin am Milnerata da, die Rede drehen sich, die Ohren gehen sich. Ich bin schon alt und greis und groß, die Rede drehen sich, die Ohren gehen sich. Ich bin schon alt und greis und groß. Ich hab gehört sagen, man wird mich verjagen, ein Haus von Dorf und von der Mühl. Die Rede drehen sich, die Ohren gehen sich. Oi Honeneck und ohne Ziel, die Rede drehen sich, die Ohren gehen sich. Oi Honeneck und ohne Ziel. Wo will ich wohnen? Wer wird mich scheunen? Ich bin schon alt, ich bin schon mit. Die Rede drehen sich, die Ohren gehen sich. Und euch mit See geht euch der hier. Die Rede drehen sich, die Ohren gehen sich.
That's David Shneer, people. Shoko Nagai, thank you.